Hey, this is Josh, and welcome to my next video in my series for tricks for working with fractions. And today we're going to be talking about really easy common denominators. For this lesson, I'm going to assume that you know the basics for working with fractions and adding and subtracting fractions. But in case you don't, in case you need a bit of a refresher, here's how it works. So in order to add two fractions or subtract one fraction from another, you need what's called a common denominator. And that pretty much means these two numbers on the bottom need to be the same. So normally we just think of a number that's in both of these two times tables. So something that's in the 2 times table and something that's in the 3 times table for this case. The number 6 is in both the 2 times table and the 3 times table. So if we were to multiply the top and the bottom of this fraction by 3 and the top and the bottom of this fraction by 2, we can get them to have a common denominator. Remember, whatever you do to the numerator, so the top number, whatever you do to the numerator, you have to also do to the denominator. And that can only be multiplication and division when we're simplifying fractions. So from here, we have the same denominator, so we can just subtract the second numerator from the first. So 3 minus 2 is 1. Nothing happens to the denominator, that just stays as 6. And we get 1 over 6. So nothing to it. But let's say you have a case where the common denominator isn't that obvious, okay? Or let's say you're having a tough time thinking of a common multiple for both of the numbers. There's a really easy way to do this that will always work. It will work every single time. The only potential downside is it might mean more simplifying later on. See my video about simplifying if you need some help with that. But let's work through this one and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I intentionally picked a number, I intentionally picked a mixed number as well, just because we haven't worked with them too much in this series, so I thought I would throw one in there. Now, whenever you're adding or subtracting or multiplying or dividing with a mixed number involved, mixed numbers are pretty silly because the first step is always turning these into an improper fraction. So let's just do that and then we'll deal with the denominators after. So with this guy here, if we're going to turn that into an improper fraction, we're basically trying to get rid of the whole. And how that works, we would just work out whatever 2 times 6 is and then add it to our existing numerator. There's also a little formula you can do for this as well. It's just the mixed, the whole number in front times the denominator. And then you can think of the numerator as a bit of a remainder that you can add to it. So in this case, this would turn our problem into 3 over 14 because nothing happened there. And then that mixed number would now become 12 plus 1, which is 13 over 6. And we'll figure out the rest of the problem from there. Okay, so here's the trick for getting a really easy common denominator. All you have to do is just multiply the numerator and the denominator of one fraction by the denominator of the other. What that means is I'm going to multiply that numerator by 14. I'm going to multiply that numerator by 14. And I'm also going to go the other way. I'm going to multiply that numerator by 6 and that numerator by 6 as well. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but you'll see how this works once I start working it out here. So let's start with this one here. So 3 times 6 is 18. And 14 times 6 is 84. So we're going to hope that 84 will work as our common denominator in this case. I'm just double checking. Yeah, it's 84. And then for the other side, well, 14 times 13, that's going to be probably the trickiest number for this. That would get you 182. And then we already know 14 times 6 for the other denominator, that will get us 84. So yes, we're working with some big numbers, and that's another downside to this method. You might find yourself working with some bigger numbers, so that's something to think about. But at least now we have a common denominator that we know will work. So let's work this out. 18 plus 182 is actually 200 even, so that's a pretty unusual number, I guess, but That's fine, that works. And then from here, we can make it a bit easier on ourselves, and we can simplify this again. So once again, if you didn't see my last video about simplifying fractions, you should check that out. But we can see that this one we can actually simplify by 2, because both of these numbers, I can't get rid of that, sorry. Both these numbers are actually even, so we can start by dividing these both by 2. And we would get 100 over 42, and they're both even again, so we can go ahead and divide those by 2 again. I'm trying to mix up the colors here too, so you can see what my written work is and what's the step or where we're at. I'm just trying to mix it up. So 100 divided by 2 is 50, and 42 divided by 2 is 21. I don't think we can simplify any more from there. However, one thing to note, since the problem was given to us as a mixed number, or if there's mixed numbers in the original problem, I'm just going to go back up so you can see the original problem. It was 2 and 1/6 at the start of the problem. We have to turn this back into a mixed number. So how many groups of 21 can we get out of 50? We can get 2 groups of 21 out of 50. And if we took those 2 groups out, we would have a remainder of 8 out of 21. And if you weren't sure if you were able to fully simplify at this step, you should be able to tell at this step, but I'll tell you what, that is as far as we can go. So 2 and 8/21. So there you go. Just to recap though, you can always just multiply the 2 denominators together, and that will be your common denominator. It will work every single time. Every single time that method will work. Just keep in mind, you might be dealing with some bigger numbers, and you might have to simplify a little bit more at the end. But if you're okay with that, this method will always work. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.